She mocked the human warrior. Then her mother ordered, kneel now. Princess Liara stood on the highest balcony of the Crystal Palace, the sun of Valora glinting off her silver hair. From this height she could see the city below, its streets filled with Valoran warriors, citizens, and the occasional visitor. But today, her eyes were not on the city. Today, her attention was drawn to the human who had arrived with the royal envoy from the nearby star system. The human walked with a confidence that was unusual for his kind. Captain Elias, the envoy's leader, was of average height by human standards, small compared to the towering Valorans who normally graced the palace halls. His armor was simple and practical, not adorned with the elaborate designs and glowing accents that marked Valoran rank. He did not carry a large weapon, only a standard energy blade at his side. To Liara, it seemed laughable. She turned to her companions, other young nobles who had gathered to observe this curious event. "Look at him," she whispered, barely holding back her laughter. "Do you really think that tiny human can survive even one round of the trials?" Her friends giggled, echoing her amusement. The trials were the ultimate test of combat skill on Valora, designed to push the strongest warriors to their limits. Humans were known throughout the galaxy for being clever, adaptable, and resourceful, but compared to the genetically enhanced strength, speed, and reflexes of Valorans, they were fragile, almost delicate. Liara's laughter was sharp, a clear note that carried across the balcony. She wanted to make sure everyone around her shared her view, that humans were weak, unworthy of attention, and certainly no match for her or her people. Below, in the grand courtyard, Elias approached the platform where the royal court would receive the envoy. His movements were measured, calm, and deliberate. He did not flinch at the towering guards or the curious stares from the crowd. Unlike the Valorans, who often displayed pride in every gesture, Elias seemed centered, almost serene. Liara narrowed her eyes. How could someone so small hold himself with such composure? It irritated her, the way he seemed unfazed by her laughter, the whispers, and the subtle jabs of the courtiers. Normally, those who faced Valoran nobles bowed nervously, showing respect born from fear. Elias did not. The queen, Serena, watched from her throne high above the courtyard. Her face was calm, neutral, but her eyes were sharp, scanning both her daughter and the human warrior. She knew her daughter well, too well. Liara had a habit of letting pride and amusement cloud her judgment. This human might not survive the encounter, but Queen Serena sensed something different about him. "Captain Elias," the queen's voice rang out calm and commanding, "you have come a long way. Welcome to Valora. You are invited to witness our customs and to demonstrate your skill if you choose." Elias bowed politely, keeping his posture straight. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I am honored to be here. I will do my best to show respect to your people." The simplicity of his words, combined with his confidence, made some in the court murmur quietly. For many Valorans, words were power, and carefully chosen words could influence entire battles. Yet Elias spoke plainly, without arrogance, without flattery. It was unexpected. Liara's lips curled into a smirk. She could not resist speaking out, drawing the attention of the crowd. "Do you really think that this human can show us anything?" she said, her voice carrying across the courtyard. "Look at him. He is barely the size of my personal guard. Does anyone believe he can last a single trial?" There was a ripple of laughter among some of the younger nobles. Even the experienced warriors shifted slightly, exchanging glances. They had seen humans before, but rarely in the heart of the palace, and never under such scrutiny. To many, Liara's mockery seemed harsh, but it also reflected what most believed about humans. They were fragile, clever perhaps, but never truly powerful. Elias did not respond immediately. Instead, he looked toward Liara, his gaze steady. There was no anger, no defensiveness, only calm acknowledgement. This made Liara's irritation grow. How dare he remain unbothered by her words? She leaned forward, her eyes glinting. "You think you can impress us with your tricks?" she challenged, louder this time so the entire court could hear. "Prove your skill, I dare you. Show us the strength of your species. I promise you will fail." The crowd grew silent. A princess rarely issued a direct challenge, and to a human, it seemed almost impossible. No human had ever faced Valora's warriors directly, much less a princess trained in combat from birth. Most expected the human to hesitate, to falter, and to bow under the weight of both insult and expectation. Elias' expression did not change. He stood tall, and for a moment there was no sound except the faint wind moving through the crystalline spires of the palace. Then he nodded slightly. "If it is a trial you wish to see, Princess, then I accept. I will do my best, but I will not underestimate anyone." The words caused a stir. There was no boast, no arrogant claim, just a promise to act with honor. Liara blinked, caught off guard. Her laughter, which had been growing, faltered. She had expected panic, fluster, or at least hesitation. Instead, she found herself facing calm determination. Queen Serena's eyes narrowed subtly. She had seen this before in some humans: resilience, courage, and an ability to adapt under pressure. Often it was underestimated, dismissed as luck or randomness. But in reality, it was a rare strength. She made a mental note to observe closely. The next day, the trial was announced. The arena, an ancient construct of translucent crystal and polished stone, had witnessed countless warriors rise and fall. It was large enough to hold dozens of combatants at once, with platforms and obstacles designed to test agility, strategy, and endurance. Liara prepared herself, donning her ceremonial combat suit that glowed faintly under the twin suns. She felt excitement mingled with irritation. The human might be clever, but he was small, untrained in the same rigorous disciplines she had mastered since childhood. Surely he could not survive more than a few minutes. Ilias entered the arena with calm steps, scanning the structure and noting the terrain. There was no fear in his movements, no hesitation. He carried only his standard weapon, light and unassuming, yet he seemed fully prepared to use his mind and reflexes to overcome challenges. The first of Liara's champions entered. Towering, muscular, trained in both energy combat and hand-to-hand techniques, he seemed confident he would crush the human immediately. Liara watched with a smirk, whispering to her attendants, "See, this will be over quickly." He will barely last a heartbeat. The match began. The champion lunged, energy blade flashing. Ilias moved swiftly, sidestepping and using the arena's obstacles to his advantage. He did not try to overpower the Valoran, but instead used timing, anticipation, and strategy to survive. The court gasped as the human dodged strike after strike, his movements precise, almost unnatural in their fluidity. Liara frowned. This was not how things were supposed to go. Humans were clever, yes, but not capable of anticipating a Valoran warrior's every move. And yet, Ilias did more than survive. He countered, using the champion's momentum against him, forcing him to stumble. The crowd murmured in disbelief. The first round ended with Ilias standing, breathing evenly, unscathed. The champion lay on the ground, surprised, frustrated, and humiliated. Liara's lips parted, and for the first time she felt a twinge of doubt. Could it be possible that this human was more than he appeared? The queen's eyes gleamed with quiet approval. She had seen the moment of realization dawn in her daughter. Liara's pride was struggling against what she was witnessing. A human had survived the impossible, and in doing so had planted a seed of respect, whether she admitted it or not. The second champion entered. Larger, faster, more deadly than the first. Liara's anticipation of the human's failure was palpable. Yet Ilias moved with calm precision, his focus never wavering. He analyzed each strike, each movement, and found openings where none seemed to exist. Slowly, deliberately, he turned the battle into a display of intellect and adaptability. Liara could no longer laugh. The realization that she had underestimated him gnawed at her pride. She leaned forward, watching closely as he survived, adapted, and countered. Each successful move he made was a blow not just to her expectations, but to her ego. By the end of the second round, the court's whispers had turned into astonished murmurs. Even the veteran warriors exchanged glances, unsure of how to assess the human's skill. Ilias had survived rounds that no human should have survived, and he had done so without arrogance or boast. His calm focus, his strategy, and his courage were undeniable. Liara stepped back from the balcony, her mind a whirl of conflicting emotions. Amusement, disbelief, and now something unfamiliar, respect, vied for dominance in her thoughts. She had mocked this human, certain of her superiority, and now she faced a reality she could not ignore. He was extraordinary. Queen Serena watched silently from her throne. The first part of the lesson was already unfolding. Liara's pride would soon meet her mother's wisdom, and the human, unwittingly, was the instrument. As the sun set over Valora, casting long shadows across the crystalline arena, Liara's thoughts were no longer on mockery or amusement. She realized that the trial had only just begun, and the human had already changed the course of her understanding of strength, courage, and honor. The arena doors closed behind the champions, and Ilias stood at the center, calm, steady, and prepared for whatever would come next. The princess, who had once mocked him openly, now watched in quiet astonishment. For the first time, Liara understood that being small or different did not mean being weak, and somewhere deep inside, a spark of curiosity and perhaps admiration began to grow. The first chapter of the trial was over, but the story had only begun, and no one in the palace would ever forget the day the human warrior arrived and survived. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over the crystalline towers of Velora, painting the palace in shades of gold and violet. Princess Liara awoke with a restless energy, her mind filled with the events of the previous day. She could not shake the image of the human, Captain Ilias, standing calmly in the arena while her champions had faltered. His composure and skill gnawed at her pride, refusing to be ignored. As she prepared for the day, she paced the balcony again, this time alone. Her attendants whispered quietly behind her, sensing her unusual agitation. Liara's reputation had always been of confidence and skill, but now doubt crept into her thoughts. The human's survival had challenged everything she had been taught about strength, power, and superiority. Meanwhile, in the courtyard, Ilias trained quietly. He did not boast, did not draw attention to himself. Instead, he studied the arena, noting the layout, the obstacles, and the likely strategies of the remaining Veloran champions. Unlike the Velorians, who relied on raw power and perfected instincts, Ilias used observation, deduction, and experience from countless battles in faraway star systems. His calm presence contrasted sharply with the tension of the Veloran crowd. Queen Serena observed from her throne, her eyes tracing the movements of both the human and her daughter. She knew that the lesson Liara needed would not come from words alone. It would come from experience, from witnessing strength that defied expectation. The queen's hand rested lightly on the armrest, the subtlest indication of anticipation in her otherwise composed posture. The trial resumed with a new set of challenges. Liara's second group of champions was more formidable than the first. Taller, faster, and trained in the rare energy techniques of the palace guard, they entered the arena with confidence. The crowd held its breath, expecting the human to falter this time. Ilias stood at the center, his stance relaxed yet ready. His eyes scanned each opponent, analyzing movement, rhythm, and intent. When the first challenger lunged with a powerful strike, Ilias sidestepped, letting the Veloran's energy pulse harmlessly over the floor. He countered with a series of precise, controlled movements, targeting weak points in balance rather than strength. The audience gasped. Each Veloran warrior expected to overwhelm him quickly, but Ilias' strategy was not brute force, it was adaptability. He used his small size to his advantage, moving unpredictably, slipping past defenses, and finding openings where none seemed to exist. Liara's smirk from the balcony had vanished. She now leaned forward, her arms gripping the railing, heart pounding with a mixture of tension and disbelief. The first round ended quickly, not because Ilias struck hard or defeated the champion in a single blow, but because he had outsmarted and outmaneuvered his opponent. The defeated warrior bowed respectfully, acknowledging the human's skill. Liara's pride burned. She had mocked this human, confident in his failure, and yet he had emerged unscathed, demonstrating a form of strength she had never fully appreciated. The second champion approached, a large and powerful fighter with glowing eyes and a reputation for brutality. The arena seemed smaller now, the stakes higher. The crowd held its breath as the warrior charged, energy blade crackling with deadly intensity. Ilias met the charge with calm eyes. He did not rush. He waited, studying the rhythm of the attack. As the warrior swung, Ilias ducked and rolled, using the momentum to reposition himself behind a barrier. The Veloran turned, surprised to see the human so quickly in a new position. Before the warrior could react, Ilias delivered a precise strike to an unprotected joint, causing the larger fighter to stumble. Liara's eyes widened. She had never witnessed such precision in battle. It was not strength alone that carried victory, but intelligence, timing, and courage. The crowd murmured in awe, their expectations shattered. The princess felt a twinge of humility, an unfamiliar sensation for someone so accustomed to being the best. As the second round concluded, Ilias barely paused. He moved to the center again, ready for the next challenge. Liara's mind raced. How could one human, small and seemingly ordinary, continue to endure where trained Valorians had failed? She could not comprehend it. The logic she had relied upon, that humans were weak and fragile, was crumbling before her eyes. The third challenger entered the arena. This one was not only skilled in combat but also trained in energy manipulation, a rare technique among the palace warriors. She moved with fluid grace, her strikes almost like a dance. Liara felt a pang of fear as she watched. The opponent was faster, more unpredictable, and more deadly than anyone Elias had faced before. Elias adjusted his stance, his mind working as swiftly as his body. He observed patterns, timing, and reactions, predicting movements just a fraction of a second before they occurred. When the warrior attacked, he used his agility and strategy to evade, responding with subtle counters that exploited her overextensions. Every move he made was precise, deliberate, and effective. The duel continued, neither participant striking with maximum force. The goal was not destruction, but survival, mastery, and understanding. Liara's fascination grew, but so did her frustration. She had intended this trial to humiliate a human, but instead, she was witnessing something extraordinary. The human's calm determination, adaptability, and courage were undeniable. Finally, after several minutes that felt like hours to the court, the third warrior acknowledged defeat, stepping back with a nod of respect. Elias stood in the center, unscathed, breathing evenly, his composure unbroken. Liara could not deny it any longer. He had survived. He had not just survived. He had outperformed expectations in a way that defied Valoran logic. The princess's thoughts were a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. She had mocked, laughed, and belittled him, yet here he stood, calm and dignified. Pride, shame, admiration, and curiosity collided within her. For the first time, she realized that strength was more than power, more than skill. It was resilience, intelligence, and courage. Queen Serena observed silently, her plan unfolding perfectly. She had chosen to let her daughter face the human without interference, knowing that the lesson would come from experience rather than words. Liara's pride would have to be humbled for true understanding to take root. The fourth challenger entered, a massive figure even taller than the previous warriors. The crowd whispered, predicting that this might finally be the human's end. Elias did not flinch. He adjusted his stance, his eyes calm and focused, ready to face whatever came next. The duel was intense. The Valoran struck with incredible speed and strength, but Elias moved with precision, his small size and agility allowing him to evade the majority of attacks. He countered sparingly, striking only when an opening presented itself, always careful not to overcommit. The battle demonstrated the human's ability to adapt, think ahead, and remain calm under pressure. Each strike and dodge was a lesson in strategy. The Valoran's frustration grew with every failed attempt to land a decisive blow, and the crowd began to murmur in awe at the human's skill. Liara's initial amusement had completely vanished. Her mind raced, trying to understand how one human could match her people's elite warriors. She felt a strange admiration, but it was mingled with disbelief and irritation. She had mocked him openly, and now she faced the uncomfortable reality that her assumptions had been wrong. The fifth and final champion of the day approached. She was swift, disciplined, and highly skilled in both energy and hand-to-hand combat. Her reputation was unmatched among the palace warriors. The crowd was silent, watching intently. Could the human survive one more round? Could he endure what no human should be able to endure? Elias remained calm, taking a deep breath as the duel began. He observed the warrior's every move, learning her patterns, anticipating her strikes. The battle was swift and intense, a display of precision and strategy. He used the arena's environment to his advantage, positioning himself in ways that minimized risk while maximizing opportunity. Minutes passed, though it felt much longer to the audience. The duel continued, neither side giving quarter, both showing skill and focus. Liara's eyes were fixed on the arena, her pride battered but her fascination growing. She had never seen combat approached with such intelligence and courage. Finally, the fifth warrior conceded defeat. Elias stood in the center of the arena, still calm, still composed. The crowd erupted in whispers and awe. The impossible had happened. A human had survived all rounds, outmaneuvered and outsmarted Valora's elite warriors, and emerged unscathed. Liara leaned back against the balcony, overwhelmed. She had mocked this human, confident in his failure, and yet he had proven her wrong at every turn. The lesson was clear. Strength could not be measured solely by size, power, or tradition. Courage, intelligence, and adaptability were equally, if not more, important. Queen Serena's gaze met her daughter's. Liara understood without words that her mother's lesson had only begun. Humility, respect, and understanding were the true marks of a warrior, and Elias, the human she had mocked, had become the teacher. As the sun set behind the crystalline towers, casting long shadows across the arena, Liara realized that her perception of humans, of strength, and of herself had changed forever. Elias had not just survived the trials. He had challenged her beliefs, humbled her pride, and sparked a curiosity that would grow in the days to come. The first day of trials had ended, but the story was far from over. Liara knew that the next encounter with Elias would push her further, testing not just her skill, but her understanding of courage, respect, and true strength. The following morning, the arena of Valora glistened under the twin suns, casting a mosaic of light across the polished, crystalline floors. The palace buzzed with anticipation. Word had spread quickly throughout the city. A human had survived the impossible, outlasting the most elite Valoran warriors. Courtiers whispered excitedly, some doubtful, some amazed, but all eager to see what would happen next. Princess Liara woke before dawn, her thoughts restless and tangled. The events of the previous day played in her mind like a storm of conflicting emotions. She had intended to mock Captain Elias, to amuse herself and her companions, yet she found herself haunted by his composure, skill, and courage. How could someone so small and unassuming stand against her people's strongest fighters? Her pride bristled. She had trained since childhood in the art of combat, had mastered techniques few could match, and yet this human had survived where many of her best had failed. The realization unsettled her deeply. She dressed quickly, moving with grace but carrying a tension she had not felt before. Elias, on the other hand, prepared with quiet focus. Unlike the Valorans, who often displayed flair and ceremony, he relied on calm observation. He reviewed the arena in his mind, recalling the movements of the previous challengers and calculating the likely strategies of the next. His focus was absolute. To the human, this was not a performance. It was a trial of skill, intelligence, and endurance. As the sun climbed higher, the crowd assembled. The remaining rounds would test not only strength and agility, but also adaptability and strategy. Liara, seated high above on her balcony, felt her pulse quicken. Today, she would see Elias face the most dangerous challenges yet, including herself. The next challenger approached, a warrior known throughout the palace as Selara. She was swift, cunning, and deadly with both energy blades and hand-to-hand combat. Her reputation was legendary. Few had ever survived a duel against her, and even fewer had done so unscathed. The crowd held its breath, waiting to see if the human could withstand this final test. Elias stepped into the arena calmly, adjusting his stance and surveying the terrain. He did not speak, did not hesitate. His focus was unbroken, his movements deliberate. The duel began with Selara launching a rapid series of attacks, each one designed to test his reflexes and endurance. Elias dodged and parried, using his small size and agility to evade strikes that could have crushed a larger opponent. Liara leaned forward, her eyes wide with a mix of anxiety and fascination. She had trained with Selara herself and knew the power she commanded. How could any human survive against such skill? Yet Elias did more than survive. He adapted. Every strike he dodged, every move he countered, was a lesson in observation and strategy. He anticipated her patterns, exploiting tiny openings she left, moving with a combination of speed and intelligence that left the audience awestruck. Selara's strikes became faster, more precise, but Elias remained calm. He did not rush, did not attack recklessly. Instead, he forced Selara into positions where her strength was less effective, turning her momentum against her. Each movement was measured, deliberate, and exact. The crowd gasped repeatedly, unable to believe the display of skill and composure before them. Liara's mind raced. The human was not only surviving, he was thriving. She felt her pride wounded, her assumptions shattered. How could someone so small and seemingly ordinary display such mastery? For the first time, she experienced a mixture of awe and frustration. Her laughter from the day before felt foolish, and she realized how wrong she had been to mock him. The duel continued, neither side giving ground easily. Solara struck with ferocity, yet Ilias countered with precision. The clash of skill and strategy became a spectacle of intelligence over sheer strength. Liara found herself holding her breath with every exchange, her previous amusement replaced by tense admiration. As the battle reached its peak, Solara attempted a powerful strike designed to end the duel. Ilias anticipated the move, stepping aside with perfect timing, and used the momentum to deliver a controlled counter that unbalanced Solara without harming her. The crowd erupted in astonished whispers. Never before had they witnessed a human not only survive, but also maintain such precision against a top-tier warrior. Liara's heart pounded. She had spent her life mastering combat, yet this human displayed qualities she had never fully understood: courage, adaptability, intelligence, and calm under pressure. It was not just physical skill that made him exceptional, it was his mind, his discipline, and his unwavering focus. Finally, Solara acknowledged defeat. She stepped back, breathing heavily, and nodded respectfully to Ilias. The audience, once certain of the human's failure, erupted in murmurs of amazement and admiration. Liara felt a strange mix of humiliation and respect. Her assumptions had been wrong, her mockery misplaced. Queen Serena watched silently, her plan unfolding. She had intended this trial not merely to test a human's skill, but to teach her daughter a lesson about humility, respect, and the nature of true strength. Liara's pride had been confronted, and the first seeds of understanding were taking root. Liara descended from her balcony to the arena floor, moving with cautious steps. She approached Ilias, who stood at the center, calm and composed despite the grueling battles. Her eyes met his, and for a moment she saw not just the human she had mocked, but a warrior worthy of respect. "You survived," she said softly, almost in disbelief. Her voice lacked the sharpness it had held the day before. "I underestimated you." Ilias inclined his head respectfully. "Princess," he said quietly, "I respect your people and your warriors. My goal was not to prove superiority, but to honor the trial and show that determination and intelligence matter as much as strength." Liara blinked, taken aback. The human spoke with humility, without arrogance, and yet his actions had demonstrated remarkable skill and courage. She felt a tug of admiration and a flicker of guilt for her earlier mockery. The queen stepped forward, her presence commanding silence. "Liara," she said, her voice steady, "what you witnessed today is more than a demonstration of human skill. It is a lesson. Strength is not measured by size or power alone, but by courage, intelligence, and adaptability. Ilias has shown qualities that your pride should respect, not dismiss." Liara lowered her gaze, a mix of shame and contemplation crossing her face. The queen's words were not just instruction, they were a mirror reflecting her own arrogance and assumptions. For the first time, she felt the weight of humility pressing gently against her pride. The crowd watched silently as the human warrior and the young princess stood in the arena. Ilias did not seek recognition or reward. He had acted with honor, demonstrating that true strength was not about dominance or showmanship, but about resilience, intelligence, and courage in the face of challenge. Liara felt a stirring of curiosity and respect growing within her. She had mocked him, laughed at him, and expected failure, yet he had proven her wrong in every way. Her thoughts were a whirlwind, blending admiration, shame, and an unspoken desire to understand more about the human before her. The day's trials concluded, but their impact was only beginning. Liara walked with slow, deliberate steps, her mind heavy with reflection. Ilias had changed something within her, not just her perception of humans, but her understanding of herself. She had seen courage, adaptability, and intelligence tested in ways she had never experienced firsthand, and she realized that her pride had blinded her to these qualities. The queen approached her daughter, her expression calm but intense. "Liara," she said softly, "today you have seen that courage and intelligence are not bound by species or size. True strength comes from heart, mind, and action. Remember this as you continue to grow, for it will guide you in ways that power alone never could." Liara nodded slowly, absorbing the lesson. She realized that the trials were not just about physical skill, but about learning humility, respect, and wisdom. The human had become more than a challenger. He was a teacher, showing her qualities she had overlooked and underestimated. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the crystalline arena, Liara stood silently, her eyes following Ilias as he prepared to leave. She had mocked him, doubted him, And yet he had triumphed, not through arrogance or brute force, but through intelligence, courage, and calm determination. For the first time, she felt something she had never allowed herself to feel fully: respect for someone outside her world, someone so different, yet so capable. The lesson was clear. Pride could blind even the strongest, and humility could reveal strengths that arrogance could never see. Liara's thoughts returned again to the human warrior. She wanted to understand him, to learn from him, and perhaps to challenge herself in ways she had never before considered. The trials had ended, but the journey of understanding, respect, and personal growth had only just begun. As the palace gates closed for the day and the city settled under the twin suns, a quiet excitement lingered in the air. The princess, once mocking and prideful, had begun a transformation guided by the courage and intelligence of a human warrior. And the people of Valora, witnessing the events, would not forget the day that a small, calm, determined human had faced impossible odds and emerged not just victorious, but respected by all. The arena, silent now, held the echoes of the battles fought, of pride challenged, and of lessons learned. And in the quiet aftermath, Liara realized that the human warrior had not only survived the trials, he had reshaped her understanding of strength, honor, and courage in ways she would carry for the rest of her life. The morning sun painted the crystal palace in warm gold and violet. As Princess Liara paced across her balcony, her mind was restless, turning over the events of the previous day. Captain Elias, the human warrior, had survived every challenge, outsmarting Valora's finest fighters with calm precision and clever strategy. Liara could not forget the sight of him standing tall, unbroken after facing the impossible. Her pride still burned, though tempered now by curiosity and a dawning respect. She had laughed at him, mocked him openly, and yet he had proven himself at every turn. For the first time, she felt that her assumptions about strength, skill, and courage were incomplete. She had always believed Valorians were naturally superior in combat, but Elias had challenged that belief. The queen's voice, calm and commanding, echoed in her memory. True strength comes from heart, mind, and courage, not size or tradition. Liara had understood the words then, but now their meaning had begun to sink deeply into her thoughts. Today, she would face Elias directly. The thought made her pulse quicken, excitement mixed with apprehension. In the arena, Elias prepared quietly. He did not boast or speak of his skill. His focus was steady, almost serene, as he studied the crystal floors, the obstacles, and the angles from which the princess's challenge might come. Unlike many warriors, he did not rely solely on strength. His mind was his greatest weapon, analyzing and predicting every movement. Liara descended from her balcony, her ceremonial combat suit glinting under the twin suns. She moved with grace, yet each step carried the weight of her pride and the uncertainty that now lingered in her mind. She entered the arena, the crowd holding its collective breath. Never before had a princess directly engaged a human in combat, and the anticipation was electric. Elias acknowledged her with a small nod, a gesture of respect. Liara's eyes narrowed slightly. She would not let him intimidate her with composure or strategy. She had trained since childhood, mastering techniques and reflexes that few could match. Today, she would demonstrate that pride, skill, and honor could not be bested by any human. The duel began. Liara moved with precision, her strikes swift and graceful, yet Elias responded with calculated patience. He dodged, blocked, and countered with subtlety, never using brute force to oppose her. Each movement of his was deliberate, a dance of intelligence and agility that complemented her skill. The crowd gasped as the two clashed. Liara's speed and strength were extraordinary, yet Elias moved with fluid efficiency, anticipating her attacks and exploiting even the tiniest openings. The princess felt an unfamiliar challenge rising within her. She could not simply overpower him. She had to think, adapt, and predict just as he did. Minutes passed, though they seemed like hours. Liara found herself testing new techniques, adjusting her timing and strategy with every exchange. Elias mirrored her movements, responding with calm ingenuity. Neither gained a decisive advantage, but both displayed remarkable skill, courage, and intelligence. For the first time, Liara felt her pride challenged not by force alone, but by intellect and determination. Elias was not merely surviving. He was teaching her through his actions, showing that strength came in many forms and that courage and intelligence could rival the greatest power. Finally, the intensity of the duel reached its peak. Liara launched a rapid series of attacks, designed to overwhelm him with speed and power. Elias met each strike with focus, dodging and countering, his movements precise and unwavering. The crowd watched in stunned silence, recognizing the extraordinary nature of this encounter. Liara's chest heaved with exertion. She realized that she was not facing an ordinary opponent. This human, whom she had once mocked, was now forcing her to stretch beyond her limits, to think and move in ways she had never considered. Her respect grew, mingled with the burning fire of determination. She would not lose. Elias, too, felt the strain, but his calm demeanor never wavered. He had faced countless battles in his life, but none quite like this. A duel of skill, intelligence, and honor with a warrior unlike any he had ever encountered. He respected Liara's strength and grace, and he adapted with care, using strategy and timing rather than brute force. The audience, mesmerized, saw not only a battle, but a demonstration of mutual respect and mastery. The clash of Valoran pride and human ingenuity created a spectacle unlike any before. Whispers spread through the crowd, acknowledging the human's intelligence, courage, and adaptability. Many had doubted him, but now they could see the truth. He was a warrior in every sense, extraordinary not just for his kind, but for any. Suddenly, Liara paused. She realized something profound. Her pride had been her weakness. She had mocked him, dismissed him, assumed he was inferior. And yet here he was, challenging her expectations at every turn. She had to acknowledge his skill, his courage, and his intelligence. For the first time, she understood that respect was earned through action, not assumption or heritage. Elias noticed the shift in her demeanor. He did not exploit it aggressively, did not strike with the intention of harming her. Instead, he continued with calm, precise movements, maintaining the integrity of the duel while allowing the lesson to unfold naturally. His actions spoke louder than words. Strength, courage, and intelligence commanded respect. Liara's heart pounded as she faced the truth. Her mockery, her pride, and her assumptions had blinded her. She had expected to demonstrate superiority, yet the human before her had shown qualities she had never fully appreciated: patience, adaptability, courage, and strategic thinking. He had survived impossible odds, outmatched the strongest warriors, and forced her to confront her own arrogance. The queen, observing from her throne, knew the moment had come. She had allowed the duel to progress without interference, knowing that Liara's pride would meet reality. Now, the princess was ready for the final lesson, one that would challenge not only her skill but her humility and understanding of true strength. "Liara," Queen Serena's voice rang out, clear and commanding, "you have witnessed courage, intelligence, and skill that surpass assumptions and pride. Now show the respect that honor demands. Kneel before the warrior you once mocked." The command echoed across the arena. Liara froze, her chest tight, her pride trembling. The words struck her deeply. She had mocked him, laughed at him, and yet now she was faced with the choice to acknowledge his strength openly. Humility did not come easily to her, but she understood that it was the true mark of a warrior. Elias stood still, calm and dignified. He did not demand it, did not seek it, but he accepted the gesture of respect as a sign of growth, understanding, and honor. The crowd held its breath, waiting to see if the princess would comply. Liara's eyes met his. For the first time, she saw not a human to mock, but a warrior to respect. Slowly, deliberately, she lowered herself to one knee. The movement was quiet, solemn, and filled with meaning. She felt a weight lift from her chest, a burden of arrogance replaced by the clarity of understanding. Elias inclined his head slightly, acknowledging the gesture with quiet respect. "Princess," he said softly, "no one is judged by their size, origin, or assumptions. True strength is in courage, intelligence, and honor." Liara felt warmth in her chest, a mixture of humility, respect, and a strange gratitude. She had learned a lesson that could not be taught through words alone. It came through experience, through struggle, and through witnessing the human's actions firsthand. The queen's eyes gleamed with approval. She had orchestrated the duel not merely to test the human, but to teach her daughter a lasting lesson about pride, respect, and understanding. Liara's kneeling was not just an act of submission. It was a moment of growth, a turning point in her life as a warrior and as a person. The crowd erupted in whispers and quiet applause, acknowledging the extraordinary lesson they had witnessed. A human, small and unassuming by Valoran standards, had faced impossible odds and emerged not only victorious, but respected by even the most proud of Valorans. The princess, once mocking and prideful, had recognized his strength and learned humility. Liara rose slowly from her kneel, her eyes meeting Ilia's again. She felt a connection that transcended words, an understanding of courage, honor, and the value of respect. She offered a small, genuine nod, acknowledging his skill and integrity. Ilias responded with a quiet, respectful smile. "Princess, your courage and willingness to learn are admirable. Strength is not only in victory, but in humility and understanding." The princess's heart swelled with a newfound appreciation for the qualities he embodied. She realized that true leadership and mastery were not just about skill and power, but also about respect, honor, and the wisdom to recognize strength in others. The trials of the day concluded, but the impact of the duel lingered. Liara walked away from the arena with a deeper understanding of herself, her people, and the human warrior who had challenged every assumption she had held. She had been humbled, taught, and inspired. As the sun dipped below the crystalline towers, casting long shadows across the city, Liara knew that her journey had changed forever. The lessons she had learned from Captain Ilias would shape her growth as a warrior, a princess, and a person. She had discovered that courage, intelligence, and honor were qualities that transcended species, strength, and expectation. Ilias had survived the impossible. He had taught humility to a princess, reshaped the perceptions of an entire court, and proven that humans, though small and unassuming, could possess extraordinary strength. And in doing so, he had created a lasting bond of respect that would endure far beyond the arena. Liara's thoughts returned to him, no longer filled with mockery but with curiosity, admiration, and a desire to learn. She knew that the final lessons were still to come, that her growth as a warrior and as a leader was just beginning. And she welcomed the challenge, ready to embrace humility, courage, and the wisdom that true strength demanded. The Crystal Palace glowed under the setting suns, a silent witness to the transformation that had occurred. Princess Liara had been humbled, taught, and inspired. The human warrior had not only survived the trial, he had reshaped hearts, minds, and expectations in a way that no one in Valora would ever forget. The next day dawned clear and bright over Valora, casting sparkling light over the Crystal Palace. Princess Liara walked through the corridors with a calm determination. She felt different now, her pride tempered, her perspective expanded. She had learned that courage, intelligence, and honor were not bound by species or size, and she understood the lesson Ilias had silently taught her. The palace was alive with whispers. The people spoke of the human who had survived impossible trials and earned the respect of even the proudest Valoran warriors. Some were still skeptical, but most were in awe. Ilias had demonstrated qualities that transcended expectation: calmness, strategy, courage, and humility. His deeds had challenged centuries of assumptions and prejudices, reshaping the way humans were viewed across the court. Liara entered the central hall, her eyes scanning the assembled warriors and courtiers. The queen, seated on her throne, regarded her with a quiet, knowing expression. Today would be the culmination of the lessons, the day Liara would fully embrace humility, understanding, and respect. Ilias waited at the center of the hall. His posture was relaxed but alert, a warrior ready for whatever challenge came next. He had no need for ceremony, his reputation preceded him. Yet he understood the significance of this final meeting. Today was not merely a duel or a demonstration of skill, it was a bridge between worlds, a lesson in understanding and respect that would echo through Valora for generations. Liara approached him with steady steps. The crowd fell silent, sensing the importance of the moment. She did not smirk, did not mock. Instead, she walked with grace, her eyes fixed on the human who had challenged her pride and inspired her growth. "You have taught me much," she said softly, her voice calm and sincere. "I mocked you, underestimated you, and assumed you were weak. Yet you have shown strength, courage, and intelligence that surpasses expectation. For this, I honor you." Ilias inclined his head, a quiet acknowledgement of her words. "Princess, your willingness to learn, to observe, and to respect is as admirable as any combat skill. Strength is not only in the body, but in the mind and heart." The crowd watched in awe. Never before had they seen such humility from a princess, nor such grace from a human warrior. The moment was more than symbolic. It represented the union of courage, wisdom, and mutual respect. Queen Serena rose from her throne, her voice commanding attention. "Liara, she said. "You have learned the greatest lesson a warrior can know. Respect, humility, and understanding are the truest marks of strength. Ilias has shown that honor is not given by birth or power, but earned through action, courage, and wisdom. Today, you have embraced these qualities." Liara bowed deeply to her mother, and then to Ilias, her movements deliberate and filled with meaning. She understood that this was more than a formal gesture. It was a recognition of truth, a declaration of respect, and an acceptance of wisdom that transcended pride. Ilias' expression remained calm but proud. He had not sought recognition, nor did he require it. Yet he understood the significance of Liara's bow. It was a bridge, a connection, and a mutual acknowledgement of the strength each had displayed in their own ways. The queen smiled subtly, knowing that her daughter had transformed not through admonishment or lecture, but through experience, observation, and personal challenge. Liara's growth was evident in her demeanor, her words, and her understanding of what it truly meant to be a warrior and a leader. The people of the court, once skeptical and even dismissive of the human, now observed him with newfound respect. He had survived challenges no Valoran had expected him to endure, not through arrogance or brute strength, but through intelligence, adaptability, courage, and calm focus. His actions had spoken louder than any proclamation. Liara stepped forward and extended her hand to Ilias. "I wish to learn from you," she said, "not as a teacher or a challenger, but as someone who respects the strength and wisdom you embody. Will you accept me as a student of your experience?" Ilias considered her words. There was no pride in his response, only calm sincerity. "Princess, I will share what I have learned, but the lessons are yours to internalize. True understanding comes not from instruction alone, but from observation, practice, and reflection." Liara nodded, a sense of purpose filling her. She understood that the path ahead would require patience, focus, and dedication, but she welcomed it. For the first time, she felt that learning from someone outside her world could enrich her skill, perspective, and character. The queen observed quietly, pleased with the interaction. Her plan had succeeded. The princess had faced her pride, acknowledged humility, and embraced the wisdom offered by an unexpected source. The human had done more than survive. He had taught the court and the princess a lesson that would echo for generations. The day continued with demonstrations and practice. Ilias showed Liara techniques from his experience, emphasizing observation, patience, and strategic thinking. Liara, in turn, applied her refined Valoran skills, blending her speed, strength, and agility with the insights he offered. The combination was remarkable, showcasing how different forms of strength could complement each other rather than conflict. The audience, composed of the Queen's council, warriors, and citizens, observed the interaction in silence. They saw not a contest of superiority, but a collaboration of skill, courage, and intelligence. Whispers of admiration spread through the crowd. The human had not only survived the trials, but had become a teacher, a bridge, and an example of honor and resilience. As the sun began to set, casting long, golden reflections across the crystalline floors, Liara and Ilias paused. The princess's mind was clearer, her understanding deeper. She realized that true leadership required humility, insight, and the courage to recognize strength in unexpected places. She had learned that honor was not measured by dominance, but by respect, intelligence, and action. "Thank you," she said quietly, looking at Ilias. "You have changed my understanding of strength, of courage, and of what it means to be a warrior." Ilias inclined his head. "And you have shown me that openness and humility are as important as skill. True strength is shared when it inspires understanding, courage, and respect." The queen, watching from her throne, felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Her daughter had embraced a lesson that could not be taught in books or lectures. It had come through experience, observation, and the quiet power of a human warrior who faced impossible odds with calm intelligence and unwavering courage. Liara and Ilias walked together through the palace corridors, discussing strategy, observation, and lessons learned. Their conversation was calm, purposeful, and filled with mutual respect. The princess was no longer mocking, no longer dismissive. She was engaged, curious, and eager to learn. As night fell over Valora, the city shimmered with reflected light, a silent testament to the day's events. The princess, once full of pride and arrogance, had transformed through her experience with the human warrior. Ilias had not sought recognition or reward, yet he had earned both through his courage, intelligence, and integrity. The palace guards, council members, and citizens whispered about the day when a human stood against Valora's finest and emerged not only unbroken, but respected by all. It was a story that would be told for generations, a lesson in humility, courage, and the true meaning of strength. Liara returned to her chambers, her thoughts alive with reflection. She realized that her journey had only begun. Elias had opened her mind to new ways of thinking, new ways of approaching challenges, and new ways of understanding strength and leadership. She knew that her growth would continue, guided by the lessons he had silently imparted. In the quiet of the evening, the princess gazed out over the city. The lessons of the arena, the humility she had embraced, and the courage of a human warrior who had faced impossible odds filled her with a sense of purpose. She understood that true strength was not merely physical. It was courage, intelligence, patience, and the ability to inspire respect and understanding in others. Elias, standing nearby, observed quietly. He had not come to teach through words, but through action and example. He had shown that humans, often underestimated, could possess extraordinary qualities. And in doing so, he had bridged a gap between worlds, leaving an enduring mark on Valora's history and on the heart of a young princess. The palace settled into quiet as the twin moons rose, casting silver light across the crystalline towers. Liara felt a new sense of clarity, understanding, and purpose. She had learned the value of humility, the importance of respect, and the power of intelligence and courage. The lessons of the human warrior would guide her for the rest of her life. In the days that followed, the story of Elias spread across Valora and beyond. He was remembered not only as a survivor of impossible trials, but as a symbol of courage, intelligence, and honor. Princess Liara, forever changed, carried his lessons with her, leading with humility, wisdom, and a deep understanding of what it truly meant to be strong. The Crystal Palace gleamed under the stars, a monument to resilience, learning, and the enduring bond between a human warrior and a Valoran princess who had learned the meaning of true strength. And in the quiet halls, the echo of footsteps and the memory of battles fought with courage and intelligence reminded all who entered that pride could be humbled, respect could be earned, and strength came in many forms, sometimes from the most unexpected places. Thus concluded the trials, the lessons, and the story of a human who had faced impossible odds, teaching humility and respect to a proud princess. The palace, the people, and the princess herself had changed forever, shaped by courage, intelligence, and the quiet power of a warrior who refused to be underestimated.